Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. We're waking up with watches and everything is for sale. So if you love this or any of the watches you see here, they are in stock as you watch this show on its debut. Reach out to Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability questions. Guys, today we have a unicorn. Granted, this one has been well loved, but it has not been polished and diminished. This is the Patek Philippe Nautilus 3711 1G, a model that set the template for the better known, later, and far more common 5711. This white gold edition, which was only made in white gold, was made from 2004 to 2006. And again, this is a short-lived white gold only reference, the 3711 1G. It is estimated that only around 200 of these were ever made. Now you can see there are marks of use here, but you can also see that the metal is still full and factory. So while this has been enjoyed, I recommend you not polish it because we certainly are not going to do so. It is gray gold, which means it's the white that's white all the way through, 18 karat with no rhodium plating, nice and slender at 8.6 millimeters as I measure it. This pioneered the three-piece case assembly, but it is different from a 5711 and more than just the fact that it is made of white gold. Unlike a 5711, you can see here, the dial is actually a black brushed metallic sunburst, so not blue and not gradient, but black with a very fine metallic brushing, white gold hands and indices. And of course, we're well into the Luminova era, so this watch has no shortage of luminescence. Also, the case construction is different. A 5711 has a screw-down crown, where this one has more of a push-down crown. It does not screw into place. It is always available for winding or for setting. And on the reverse of the watch, we have a Geneva Hallmark caliber 315. Only the 324 and the 26-330 were used in the 5711. This 315 was never used in a 5711. You can also see that the construction of the bracelet is old school, as here we have removable links fixed in place using screws, a characteristic of older Patek Philippe bracelet construction. Today, they're fixed in place using pins and sleeves. We have a double fold deployment. We have a clamshell lock with the Calatrava cross. You can get a better look on the back at the beginning of three-piece case construction. The 3711 had it before the 5711 did, which means this case back is a separate element that screws in rather than being integrated into the mid-case. Little 315 construction. It's only different from the 324 in the beat rate. So 315 is a 3 hertz, whereas 324 is 4 hertz. And of course, this being pre-2009, it has the Geneva Hallmark rather than the Patek Philippe seal. It is super easy to wear on the wrist as it's 40 millimeters in diameter if you measure it diagonally. It's 42 if you measure wingtip to wingtip. But being thin and flat and flush, and only about 44 millimeters lug to lug, it wears really nicely. A super rare watch and an absolute apex find, the capstone to any collection. A 3711 is a rarity among rarities. Consider that I have featured several green dial 5711s and even a couple of Tiffany's in the past. This is the first 3711 I have encountered. Now, let's say you want something sporty, but you want something that's perhaps a little bit more of a strap watch style and more contemporary. Well, we have this lovely automotive-inspired 6007G. So this watch came out in 2023. It builds on the language of the 6006 before it, the 6000 before that, and the 5000 way back in 1991. So this, of course, is part of 3 editions launched in 2023, blue, yellow, and red, primary colors. We've got a racing style track outboard for reading the fractions of seconds, and then we've got an inboard, a little crosshatch that Patek describes as a carbon pattern. The dial is different than the previous 6006 and 6000. As you can see, here's a 6000R right here. You can see that we have that little radial date as well as off-center seconds, whereas this is a little bit more conventional, but whereas these numerals are applied features only in the sense that they are transferred lacquer. These are three-dimensional 18-karat white gold with hands to match, and this watch is elaborately loomed like the dashboard of a vintage Mercedes, Porsche, or Jaguar Roadster. It really has that look in the dark. Now, the case is substantial. As you can see, absolutely no doubting the design lineage. You can really see how the 6000 eventually became the 6007. And although it's a 40 millimeter watch because of the strength of these large rounded off lugs, it actually wears a little bit bigger than that. I'd encourage you to think of it as more of a 41 or a 42 millimeter round watch, though it's not thick. It is flat with an almost flat domed bezel, a really good look with a lot of substance. Some dress watches are weak. They're a little bit petite, wan, over-refined. This right here has a lot of punch. And you can see it's on a commensurately carbon-patterned leather strap with a matching cyan blue stitch. And then we have a simple white gold Patek Philippe spade-style pin buckle on the case back, caliber 26-330. 45-hour power reserve, 4 Hz beat rate, free sprung, 6-position adjustment. As of this year, it should be accurate to no worse than about +2 - 1 second per year. That is Patek's new ballpark figure for its movements, which is to say extraordinarily precise. And because this is a new generation Patek caliber, the 26-330 has hacking seconds and an anti-magnetic silicone hairspring. Finishing is excellent. As you can see, all of the jewel sinks, the screw sinks, and the edges of the bridges are beautifully beveled. I would even go so far as to say Patek finishing on standard automatics has gotten better since the days of the old 315 caliber that you see on this 3711. Good, and Geneva hallmark and all. I just feel like as Patek has gotten used to the idea of people scrutinizing casebacks, particularly the beveling, you can no longer see any of the marks of the mechanical first pass. A really cool piece. But if you want something that's a little bit more automotive inspired even, and a little bit smaller at 37 millimeters, remember with this case form factor, they all wear a bit big. This is the 6000R. 6000R came out in 2008, 3 years after the original 6000. And of course, some big changes relative to the original 5000 in that we now have this lunette style radially arrayed date, which I really love. Again, you've got that automotive imagery. It does feel like you're looking at the clock, the tachometer, the speedometer of a vintage roadster. We've got a 240 micro rotor here, just like the 5000 before it, which means this is a very thin watch, and it uses what's considered to be the more premium of the two families of Patek automatics. So typically center rotors are more common in less expensive watches, which is why most Calatravas feature center rotor automatics, but the 6000 and the 5000 featured the 240. Which gives you the open and beautiful caseback vista of a manual, but with the convenience of an automatic. Whereas you could see with the conventional rotor automatic, the winding bridge and the rotor cover a lot of the view. With a micro rotor, you don't have that. 48-hour power reserve, automatic winding here, 5-position adjustment, anti-magnetic silicone hairspring right here. Pardon me, actually. Let's double check that, right? Nope. This is one of the few of the 6000Rs that was made with a metallic hairspring. Fun to see. That is a very narrow window. That would have been between the Patek Philippe seal in mid-2009 and the arrival of the silicone. That probably would have been about mid-2009 to about early 2011 this watch would have been made. Interesting how you can chart the changes by looking at little things like that. Brown, bronze, metallic sunburst dial that matches the rose gold of the case beautifully. And taking a look at it on my wrist, you can see because of the style of those lugs, it does wear a little bit big. You want to think of this as more of a 40 millimeter round watch in terms of how it fits and how it sits. Okay, let's continue with our Patek theme, but with an all-time great. This is the Patek Philippe 5070G, a watch that was made from 2002 through 2006 in about 250 copies per year. It's rare, it's beautiful, it's got presence, it is a legend. The 5070 debuted at Basel in 1998 and was considered to be a monster. A 42 millimeter Patek Philippe dress watch. It was modeled after an even bigger 1950s prototype that was 46 millimeters in diameter. That was the 2512, I believe. So this is 42, and you have a lot of the dial features of the 2512. We have this vertical satination that runs top to bottom. It's not a conventional sunburst. Blackened white gold hands and numerals, and then concentric tracks outboard that disguise the disparity between the Lamagna-based base movement, which is the CH2770, and the size of the case. You can see how close the registers are, but it's only the kind of thing you notice when it's brought up. We have this lovely stepped and flattened, almost pagoda-like bezel that also helps to disguise that disparity, and the watch has an immense amount of presence on the wrist. As you can see, it really stands out, though it's not particularly thick. It's actually quite flat. And because of the shape of the lugs and the fact that they're not super broad, it does wear on a wrist as small as 15 centimeters circumference, with mine being 16. In fact, I would go so far as to say in 42 millimeters, this wears more easily on my wrist than this wears in 40. Now let's take a look at something that I think is important to note. This was sort of the beginning of Patek using gray gold. You can see how it has a duller, almost gray aesthetic, whereas this looks blindingly white like platinum. Back in 2002, when this came on the market, Patek was still using rhodium-plated white gold to create a blinding platinum-like whiteness, whereas by the time these were being made from 2004 to 2006, you're now seeing Patek Philippe using the darker but unplated gray gold, so it's really interesting to see these side by side. Of course, the movement is a big part of why you buy a 5070. Lemania based, the movement would have been the Lemania 2320, which was a luxe version of the 2310. Of course, Omega's version of this went to the moon as the 321. Patek's has some major upgrades. So big upgrades, a longer power reserve, 60, not 48. Also, an overcoil hairspring rather than flat. A free-sprung regulator, Jaromax style, rather than a mobile stud index. Geneva hallmark finishing, which speaks for itself. Steel chronograph components, brass, bridges and plates that are rhodium plated. Beveling is excellent. You can see that the detailing of the clutch in particular is intricate, fine, and uncompromising. Column wheel capped in typical Geneva fashion with a lateral clutch. Column wheel feel is excellent, adjusted in every position and to hot and cold. Has a matching clasp, which intriguingly is gray gold, not traditional plated white. So you can see there is gray gold. That's what white gold looks like today. And that's what white gold looked like when the watch was made. The clasp is slightly newer than the watch, which is a fascinating dichotomy to witness. All right. From Romain Gauthier, we have a model made from 2015 to 2020 in only 10 pieces. This is the Prestige HMS, Heure Minute Seconde. So hours, minutes, and seconds in a watch that is nicely sized at 41 millimeters in platinum. You can see the case incredibly complex. You have this undulating profile, then you have these concave inward dished lugs that are beautifully welded and hand finished onto the case to create that ultra sharp curvaceous mating with the case profile. This is super slow going manual case assembly and finishing. No crown, where is it? It's on the case back. We have a little serrated crown that you can use for winding the watch. It also pops up, so when it does, you can set the watch. And you can see how it does feature hacking seconds, which I love. I'll show you that again. Pardon me, no hack. I was motion blind for a moment. A beautiful watch in every regard. This is Romain Gauthier finishing at its absolute peak. There's no compromise here. You might have heard that the C, the Continuum, the sports watches are finished to a different standard. Not here. This is the original standard, inspired directly by Gauthier's horological hero and neighbor in the Vallée du Jeu, Philippe Dufour. Thicker bridges are used to allow for broader bevels, which are a mile wide, truly mirrored, hand-finished, and blessed with interior bevels that draw out and over the bridge itself to make them deeper and sharper than any other. A trick learned from Dufour. You can see the freehand engraving, the region of origin. This is number 5, only 10 were made, and you can see that even that little plate was engraved by hand. A free-sprung balance beating away at 4 hertz. The watch has a 60-hour power reserve. You can see black polished steel. It is used prolifically, along with Gauthier's own recursive circle wheels that he makes in-house, a black polished click, which is a beautiful construction, media blasted bridges and plates, and all of this wonderfully sized for a human wrist. As you can see, though not small at 41 millimeters, it also isn't Brobdingnagian, oversized and overwrought. It's quite thin and far more wearable than the later Logical one, which is beautiful but also huge. This is the Prestige HMS, one of 10 made in platinum. Absolutely stunning. The quality of what you get here is worth the price of admission. This is why Gauthier is frequently discussed with absolute reverence. Oh, one quick note. You may note that this is fake alligator. We often use that when we're shipping watches between international offices. Just because of CITES treaties, this is safer. But it is a Jean Rousseau hand-cut and stitched strap, and that's the OEM supplier to De Bethune and FP Journe. So your choice. You can keep the strap, which will last forever because it's synthetic, or we can fit it with gator. Absolutely no additional charge. Your choice. I would actually stick with the synthetic. We have Gauthier's buckle, which in a nod to the movement features its own inward angles. Aren't those bevels beautiful? Okay. Working our way through now, we have a timepiece that is from the more is more school of design and engineering, designed by Sébastien Cholomonte and launched in 2015 in 25 pieces. This is the stainless steel Angelus U10 Tourbillon Lumiere. So basically a series of vitrines for various displays. You have a flying tourbillon, you have a deadbeat seconds display, and you have a power reserve indicator with lateral ports for viewing that lovely 18,000 vibration per hour tourbillon. Taking a close look, you can see it also has a wonderful hand-formed overcoil. It's a big, slow-beating tourbillon that benefits from a twin-barrel movement with 90 hours of power reserve. Manufacturer caliber 100, which was sized and shaped specifically for this watch and this edition of 25 pieces. You can see the tourbillon cage is beautifully finished and visible from every angle. The movement's actually made of German silver, though somewhat puzzling. It's then rhodium-plated to make it look like rhodium-plated brass. Quel dommage, but it is beautifully made in every regard. We have a combination of conventional alligator leather and then I believe Alcantara on the bottom, which feels wonderful. Now, two ways of understanding the size of this watch. It's about 43.8 millimeters from lug to lug, so short across the wrist, but long down the wrist. The watch, which has a little bit of the aesthetic of an electric travel-sized shaver, it's about 63 millimeters long. Let me show you how it actually wears when you put it on your wrist. Wears quite easily, comfortably. And again, lug to lug, it's easily within the bounds of my wrist. You look at it like this, not a whole lot of power reserve deadbeat second tourbillon watches out there. There's a famous one from F.P. Journe, but that costs a lot more money. Automotive, empty and full style linear power reserve indicator. And I love the deadbeat mechanism, as well as the fact that it sits on a concave dial. The watch, perhaps surprisingly, even features a small amount of luminescence. It is the black variety, but it is there nonetheless. There is a very small amount on the power reserve. A fun piece. Also very loud. You can hear it in a quiet room, which I absolutely adore. Twin barrels, 90 hours of power reserve. By the way, if you're wondering, what is Angelus? Angelus is the ultra-luxury brand owned by the manufacturer La Joux out of Le Chaux-de-Fonds. They're still high luxury, but slightly higher volume brand. Arnold & Son is better known. Angelus is above Arnold & Son in the La Joux pantheon of brands. And so, of course, Le Joux itself is owned by Citizen Group, so there will always be money and know-how behind this watch, though it is rare, to provide it with parts and service. It's the best of both worlds, rarity and projectable service availability. Finally, something from another world, and by that I mean Germany. From Lang und Heyne, this is the incomparable Friedrich III. Now this one has a black galvanized sterling silver dial, incredible rose gold hands cut and polished manually. It is a white gold case, 39.2 millimeters in diameter, with screw and bar fixed straps for absolute security. A lovely Lang und Heyne branded onion style crown. And then you turn it over, caliber 6 with a trigonal bridge profile. Let me grab my polishing cloth here, because this watch definitely deserves the best. Let me go back to the dial and show it in its finest light, unmarred by my fingerprints. This thing just slays. I consider Lang und Heyne to have one of the best combinations of movement finish and architecture in the world. So a trigonal bridge, you can see that it's been pared down. So instead of having a big three-quarter style bridge like most German watches do, the bridge has been carved away to show the drivetrain underneath, and it bears all. You can see the solarization double and single on the crown wheel and ratchet wheel. You can see that the screws are enormous, slotted and chamfered and black polished. You can even see that the teeth of the wheels have been micro-beveled. There's media blast on the bridges and plates. We have a black polished cover for the escape wheel. We have a enormous balance that beats away at 18,000 vibrations per hour. And look at how even the spokes of the balance have been highly stylized. Overcoil hairspring so it breathes concentrically in any position. Note the use of rose gold wheels for the train and a diamond capstone for the balance with a black polished swan's neck fine adjustment mechanism. All of this with a 55-hour power reserve. It winds and sets beautifully. You can see how visible the drivetrain and the escapement are. And you can see that the engraving and the movement is all freehand. That's not done with an engine, it's not done with a laser, it's not done with a drill. And in my opinion, if you want the best finish and architecture in combination, you go with these guys. You can even see the intricacy of the engraving of the balance cock, which has been freehand cut with a banknote scrolling. Throwing it on the wrist, you can see 16 centimeters in circumference. My wrist wears it well. So while the lug profile is strong and makes the watch appear bigger than it is, it's actually quite wearable. If you love this watch or any you saw today, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.